Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in Salesforce Epics Hour. My name is Amit. I am the founder of the Epics Hour and your host for today. And today we have a great session, Introduction to Salesforce Industry Order Management. And we have a great speaker from the Salesforce team, Mahmood. So let me hand over to him for his introduction and the presentation. Hand over to you.
Thanks, Amit, for having me here and organizing this. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you are joining from. So forward-looking statement on behalf of my company. So today I'm going to be talking on the products, the features and the capabilities that are already part of the product, and make your purchasing decision based on what's on the product and not based on what's on the roadmap. So a bit of an introduction about me before I start with the OEM. So I am a senior program architect within Salesforce Industries, part of Salesforce. We specialize on industry-specific solutions. And prior to joining Salesforce, my bulk of my experience comes from the companies like Lucent, HP, and Nokia, where I've been both into products and services. So I've been in the industry for about 20 years now. And so I've been lucky to be part of some of the large-scale transformations across different geographies. So I'm relatively a newbie to Salesforce ecosystem. So I joined Vlocity back in December 2019. So it's going to be getting close to 2 years now by end of this year. So I picked up some certifications on Communications Cloud and some Salesforce certifications as well. So hopefully more lined up on my certification journey. So that's my family there. I think like any other parent, my life outside work is busy managing my kids. So this is a photo, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, where we went to Cairns, it's a northern part of Australia. And so we are still in lockdown at the moment in Melbourne. So it's I think this lockdown will go on for another few more weeks. And hopefully, I think we should be able to travel soon. Fingers crossed. Yeah, so that's about me. So let me get into the order management part. So this is the agenda that I have for you today. So I'll be talking about industries order management, and industries order management is not a product in itself. So it is a part of Communications Cloud. So when I talk about OEM, I'll also be talking about some of the other related modules and how actually it fits within the industry cloud. And then we will get into order management architecture, where I'll be talking some general principles of order management architecture and how Salesforce Industries OEM is realizing some of the next generation capabilities that is desired from an order management application. So we'll then go into some deep dive into different topics within OEM. So I have actually included a lot of demos in between. My intention is not to make sure that it's not just in theory. I also want you to get a feel of how exactly it looks in the system, how actually the end-to-end order management configuration happens within the system. I think one of the beautiful aspects about the Salesforce Industries OEM is a lot can be achieved just by configuration and declarative means without almost no coding. So I'll be actually leaving some enablement resources, Q&A probably at the end. So I won't be taking any questions during the sessions because I have a lot to cover. And at the end of the session, we'll go through some Q&A. Okay, so OEM is a module within the Communications Cloud. So Salesforce Industries currently has 12 different industry vertical solutions. So what you're seeing here in the blue boxes, they are the industry cloud solution, which are formerly part of Vlocity, now part of the Salesforce Industries. The OEM as a module is part of Communications Cloud, Media Cloud, and Energy and Utilities Cloud. So today, the most of what I'm going to speak about applies to all of these three cloud. And OEM as such, in terms of, if you look at the business process within these three industries, they are very similar. So in terms of the OEM capabilities, whatever I'm going to what I'll be talking today will be applicable to all three industry solutions. So this is the application map. I think most of you will be familiar with the horizontal CRM capabilities like Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Customer 360, and so on. What you're seeing here in orange boxes are Communications Cloud module. And today we'll focus on the order management. I'll also be talking a bit about enterprise product catalog and CPQ. So I'll not dwell too much into detail on those topics, but I will touch on that as in when relevant for order management. On the CPQ part, so my colleague Georgie has already had a session on the Apex Hour. So I would actually encourage you to go through that so that you get a deep dive into CPQ. But I won't be dwelling too much into CPQ in this session, but I probably will touch on these two topics as we go through. Okay, so where does the OEM fit within the user journey? So when you look at user journey from a B2B or a B2C customer's point of view, typically it starts with the marketing where the customer is becoming aware of the product. So this is something which is supported by the marketing capabilities within the Salesforce horizontal CRM itself. Then you have the sales processes, depending on whether it is a B2B or a B2C customer. You could have a lead management, opportunity, account management, which are all part of the horizontal CRM capabilities. The CPQ and the OEM are the first point of interaction where during the sales user journey, these are the two modules that become a part of that end-to-end journey. Then you have the contract lifecycle management, which is another module within the Communications Cloud. We will not touch much on that because that is a topic in itself. Planning and forecast is part of the horizontal CRM capabilities. Omni-channel, SCART, real-time interaction management, more from the digital experience point of view. Then asset-based ordering. So that's another key topic we'll touch today. For a service which is already active, and if the customer is making any changes like a modification or a disconnection of a service and so on. So asset-based ordering is one of the key features or aspects of the Salesforce Industries OEM. And then you have, as part of the user journey, other modules, either part of the standard CRM capabilities or some extended capabilities like field service. So in the user journey, if you look at it, so these are the three highlighted touch points will be the area of focus for today's session. Okay. So we will dive into the order management. So order management is not something new. I remember like when I started my career where I was a developer for one of the element management system with the Lucent back then. I remember developing a C code which was very specifically meant for activating certain components in the HDS Honest technology back then. We were not calling it order management back then. That code was part of the element management system. Then you had going forward, we used to have network management system and TMS, which sits on top, which is more of a vendor agnostic, technology agnostic platform, which combines all the element management system and the layer which sits on top. But if you look at fast forward now, we do have the order management with all the next generation capabilities, which is catalog driven. So this is an important aspect to remember as you'll be seeing through the demo today. The whole order management, when it comes to decomposition, orchestration, everything is catalog driven. It is cloud based. The Communications Cloud is a software as a service, so it's entirely cloud based. Dynamic workflows. So we are moving away from those rigid monolithic workflows to a dynamic workflows paradigm. So everything is configuration based. The workflows are generated runtime and for easy management. And then it's entirely declarative, which is something you will be seeing during today's demo as well. Almost everything you can achieve with no code and configuration based. These are some of the key drivers and the KPIs that OEM in general and especially the Salesforce Industries OEM is realizing. Drives revenue by reducing time to market for new offers, provides a unified view of both commercial and technical products. If you look at from the user's point of view, not just from the customers, but also from the product managers, software designers, or the fulfillment designers, The Salesforce Industries OEM gives a unified view of both commercial and technical products, significantly reduces configuration cost by providing a seamless, consistent design time and runtime experience for users. So there are rich user interfaces for managing orders in real time, and also providing that consistent design time as well as runtime view. And then there are other KPIs like reduces fulfillment cost through end-to-end visualization of fulfillment flows and guided task resolution, improves customer experience through use of next generation catalog-driven architecture to fulfill orders faster and accurately. Catalog-driven is one of the key features of Salesforce Industries Order Management. Again, during the demo, I think this is something we will stress and underline as we go through it. So this is the order management architecture. So if you look at the bottom, which is the catalog metadata, so all the objects and the data that order management as a module, as a product relies on, the configuration is stored in the Salesforce objects. Some of the objects are standard Salesforce objects, and some of them are introduced as a custom objects introduced by the Communications Cloud, especially addressing some of the communication industry requirements, extending some fields or some custom objects. So order management as a product, if you look at it, the first step within the order management is order decomposition. So once the CPQ submits order into the order management, order decomposition is a first step where you can look at it as a module which decomposes a big chunk of an order into a smaller blocks, where we call it as a technical orders or sub orders. Each of the sub order is fed into an orchestration engine. The orchestration engine has a runtime flow which determines what are the steps that needs to be executed in order to fulfill each one of those sub orders or technical orders. And then from the order management point of view, interface management is one of the key aspects because in an enterprise setup, you have other downstream systems like be it activation, billing, workforce management, and so on. How with the configuration, you can construct the payload and maintain an interaction management with other downstream system. Fallout management is another aspect that we'll talk about today. On a rainy day scenario, how does the order management handles the fallout? And one of the outcomes at the end of order being fulfilled is the creation of an asset or a service inventory. Assets are the Salesforce out of the standard objects, again extended with some of the fields that were introduced by Communications Cloud. So asset is a record that is getting created at the end of order being fulfilled. Key order management functions. So these are some of the capabilities. So we will go through them as we go through the sessions. I will not do too much detail on this slide at this stage. Okay, COM versus SOM. So this is one of the questions that we get asked, whether Salesforce Industries OEM is a customer order management or a service order management. So customer order management, if you look at it, it's an application which manages an end-to-end life cycle of a customer, whereas service order management manages end-to-end life cycle of a service request. So typically, when you look at SFI OM being part of a Salesforce platform, so in that way, it is much closer, sitting very close to the customer engagement layer. So obviously, it is a COM, but at the same time, if you look at some of the standard requirements that are expected from a SOM layer is order validation, order decomposition, and order orchestration. These are three standard requirements of a COM or a SOM. So SFI order management doesn't have that system rigidity to say that it can only do COM function. So it is built on a layer agnostic principles. It can do both COM and SOM. But what happens is, depending on the customer that you're working with, for example, a lot of customers already have a service order management, which are either focused on a domain or they are focused on a vendor. A vendor could have their own service order management, or it could be a different technology stack altogether. So depending on your customer landscape, if they are already going through an OSS transformation, and if they are looking at elevating some of those functions and looking at using SFI OM capabilities to address some of those SOM challenges. So SFI OM can very well do that. So SFI OM, just to underline on that point, it is built on a layer agnostic principles, and it can do both COM and SOM function. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to go through a quick end-to-end demo. So we'll not well too much into details during the demo, but I just wanted to show an end-to-end demo so that as I go through the session, so you will get familiar with some of the terminologies I'm using, and also you'll be able to visualize some of the concepts that I'm talking about as I go through the session. Okay, so this is a demo org which already has a communications cloud. So what I want to do is I want to go to pick one of the accounts. This account record page, it could look different depending on your layout setup. So I want to go and create an order record. So the account is already populated because we started from the account page. So I'll give the today's date and then pick up price list. So price list is similar to Salesforce price book. So it's where all the products and the prices are stored. Again, I'll not go too much deep into this. This is more on the CPQ side. So what I'm doing here is I'm just creating an order record, right? So these are some of the key fields that I'm entering now. So I'll save that order record. So I want to open that record and I click configure here. So what this configure button does is it takes me to the CPQ UI. So this is an out-of-the-box UI, cart UI that comes from Salesforce Industry Cloud. And this UI, again, it's more from the browsing capability and adding of the products. So there are different aspects to this UI itself. Again, I'll not go too much deep into this. So you can learn more about this UI from the CPQ session. So what I want to do is I want to add one of the products that I have in mind. So this particular product, what it has is it has an offer, and then it has a child product under that. Also CPQI, what also it allows is another section here. It's a config section where actually you can configure different characteristics or attributes for that particular offer or the product. So depending on the EPC configuration, as in the enterprise product catalog, how we have configured the product, those attributes will appear here. But from the order management point of view, you can look at it this as an UI where the customer is browsing for the products that he's interested in, and he's adding that, configuring those features, more of order capture, a step within the order management. So the system at this stage, what it's doing is the CPQ is submitting that order into the order management. So this is the first point of interaction between the CPQ and OEM, and the OEM is being engaged at this time. So what I want to do is, so we are back to the account page. So I'll go to again related tab and open that order. Okay. So within the order, so what's important is the decomposition here. So what this decomposition tab shows is the decomposed technical products. Look, if you look at it on the left-hand side, what we have here is the dedicated internet offer and the professional business service install. This is the product offer and the product that we have added in the cart. And after decomposition, the system actually has generated these fulfillment requests, which includes all of these technical products with the actions here as add. Now, during the decomposition demo, further in the session, we'll actually try to look at how the system has generated all these technical product as to what configuration has led for system to generate these technical products. And then there is this orchestration plan here. So this orchestration plan, let me actually use this another view so that you get an end-to-end view of the complete plan. Okay, so the system has generated this orchestration plan dynamically during runtime. This orchestration plan has different steps. So each of these blocks, if you see, we call it as orchestration items. These are the steps that gets executed in order to fulfill this order. In this case, for the demo, since all of these tasks are more of a mock-up, so it has completed end-to-end has been completed. So these colors have different meanings. We will actually go through them during the session. So in this case, all the tasks till the end has been completed. If you look at each one of these sections, what we call it as a swim lanes, which is generated by these separate lines here, each of these swim lanes corresponds to the steps that are required to fulfill the technical products, each of these technical products. Now, if I go back to, let me refresh this page. So since this order is already fulfilled, we should see this order. So this order is already activated. Now, if I go to the account page, let me open it. So an asset record has been created. So asset record represents an active instance of the service that customer has purchased. From the asset record, you can initiate MACD or after sales order. For example, customer is requesting for an upgrade or a disconnect suspension and so on. So you can initiate that MACD order from the asset. Again, we'll do a bit more deep dive in the next session as we go through order decomposition and order orchestration. But this is what I wanted to show from the end-to-end point of view, what an order goes through once it is being submitted to all the way the order being fulfilled. Okay, so EPC driven order management. So this slide, so I had introduced just to show you that order management operates closely with the enterprise product catalog and the CPQ. So enterprise product catalog is where products are designed and the entire lifecycle management is performed all the way from product getting designed to product getting retired is being maintained and managed within EPC. OEM has a direct interaction or works closely with the EPC. For order decomposition or orchestration is catalog driven, and it is depends on the configuration which is maintained within the EPC. And CPQ for the point where order details are captured and the order is getting created is done by the CPQ. So the CPQ also has a runtime engine for pricing and so on. So again, CPQ also has a direct interaction with order management. So we'll get a bit more deeper into the topic. So we'll start with order decomposition. So what I want to do is, before I get into order decomposition, I want to touch on the product modeling aspect because one of the aspect of the order management is, since it is catalog driven, so it is important to understand why it is important to differentiate between the commercial and the technical model. So if you look at commercial model, an offer and a products offer is basically a combination of products. As a telco or as a carrier, you might actually want to group certain products together to form an offer or a product. So it's more from a top-down point of view. From the customer point of view, offers or products are where you configure the characteristics of the product that customer is interested in buying, the pricing associated with that offer or a product. And on top of that, you have the promotions and discount. Pricing changes depending on the promotions that you want to give or the discount arrangement. Technical model is more from a bottom up. based on your downstream system requirements, depending on your let's say OSS landscape, whether your billing system or an activation system could have an expectation as to how a product purchased by the customer, they would want to see the set of attributes or specification that needs to be sent to them. As an example, if you look here, the dedicated internet offer and the professional install is a commercial offer and commercial product that is being sold to the customer. So it will have the characteristics and the attributes which are more of interest or from a point of view of the customer, which includes the pricing and other characteristics. Whereas from your downstream system point of view, they could have an expectation to structure the product differently, and they could have an expectation to provide them more information than what is just of an interest to the customer. So in this case, if you look at it, dedicated internet offer and the professional install has been sort of decomposed into, let's say, internet billing spec, where a billing system is telling you that we need a customer facing service as internet billing spec, and on top, and it has to have other two technical products under that. Accordingly, provisioning system could have a different expectation, and for CPE logistics, you could have another system which is expecting a technical product in a certain structure and certain attributes, right? So this is this separation of a commercial and technical model is very important for some of the key reasons being, if you look at in an enterprise or a telco, typically commercial model is maintained and managed by the marketing or a sales users who, and commercial model is prone to changes. For example, as a telco, you could be introducing new offers every now and then. So the persona who is actually making changes to these offers and the products are a bit less techy in nature, I would say. Whereas technical model, since it is downstream driven, you may not always have to make changes. So once you have established that these are the technologies you want to support and these are the products you want to support, right? From the technical model point of view, they don't undergo changes very often. And the persona that who is actually going to manage and maintain the technical model could be a fulfillment designer who is much more techy in nature. And the second aspect to remember is more from the modularity point of view, right? Where as a technical model, let's say in this case, customer facing specification, right, for a given product, you could reuse across multiple products. So whenever actually you are introducing a new commercial product or a new variant of a commercial product or an offer, you can actually use them like a Lego blocks and construct a commercial product rather than having to build this technical product each and every time. So all the order management specification, especially with respect to the orchestration relationships, decomposition relationships, and the orchestration plan definitions, they're all tied to the technical model. So you don't need to actually update the technical model each and every time. So that's why this separation is very important. So I want to underline two key takeaways as well from this slide. We use the different terms like offer, product, CFS, RFS, and resource. So this is more SID aligned. So Salesforce Industries EPCs allows for a SID alignment. So you can actually configure the product as an offer, product, CFS, RFS, and so on. But they're all records in the product to table. So product to Salesforce table. And the decomposition relationship is a link between the commercial and the technical technical product. So as we go through the demos and the session, so I'll show you actually how we link the commercial product to the technical product through decomposition relationship. So order decomposition. So the primary goal of order decomposition is to break a big chunk of work, functional block into a smaller blocks. And order decomposition is a black box in the sense you as a services team or someone who is implementing cannot make changes to the order decomposition as a module, what happens within the order decomposition. But however, you can actually control the output based on some of the inputs that you provide to the order decomposition. So these are the inputs that you provide to the order decomposition. Fulfillment catalog configuration, rules and conditions. We will look at that in a moment during one of the demos. Order and order item details refers to actions on offers. So basically, when we looked at the earlier demo where we added product to the cart and actually an action, whether you are actually going for a connect, disconnect, or a modify and so on. So that's an input to the order decomposition. Customer inventory, which refers to assets and inventory of item objects. Assets and inventory item are two different records being maintained within industries OEM. Now, this is applicable for an existing service. For example, if there's already an active service and the customer will want to disconnect that service, so the order decomposition also needs to have that knowledge and the details of an existing service. As an output, so you get a decomposition tree. So decomposition tree, if I go back to the earlier order I created, let me open that. So what you see here on the right is the decomposition tree. So basically this whole structure that is from the commercial model, this whole structure that is being generated here is the decomposition tree. Then set of fulfillment requests to the corresponding actions. As we saw, the decomposition tree includes all the fulfillment requests and the actions to be fed into the orchestration engine to say whether it is an add, modify, or a disconnect, and so on. Association to customer inventory. So this is applicable only for existing service. And propagation of propagated information from higher to lower levels. So attribute propagation is one of the important aspects of order decomposition. So basically, when again I go back to this screen here, right? During decomposition, all of this the technical products that have been generated will be self-sufficed in terms of the information that is required to fulfill them. So that is achieved during the order decomposition. The attributes that are propagated as an information that is either propagated from the commercial model or the related object. As an example, let's say in this case, DIA router logistics specs, this refers to a router that needs to be delivered to a customer. In that case, you could have a customer address that is required by your the downstream OSS system to fulfill that. So address could be one of the information that is essential. So order decomposition is the module that will be used to propagate that information from the commercial layer, whether it is from the commercial product or associated objects like account object, which has the address to propagate that information. Okay, so before I continue more in theory, let me show a bit more detail on the order decomposition. So let's look at this earlier example itself. So this is already a fulfilled order. So I'm just doing a more in a reverse engineering way, as in actually what configuration was present, which has led to this this particular commercial product that we have added to the cart or a customer has purchased has resulted in these technical products being generated. Let's look at this. So if I click on this button here, so what's highlighted here shows that, right, this particular commercial product has resulted in more than one technical product here, right? So accordingly, if I click on this one, so this is resulting in one and two technical products. Okay, let's have a look at this. Now, if I go to the product configuration associated with this, when I click here, so this opens the product record, but I actually want to go to the fulfillment tab so that we get the information that are of interest for the order management. So we have here the decomposition relationship that have been configured, right? So there is a source product and destination products. In this case, we have a decomposition relationship for a source product, meaning this is a decomposition relationship where this product is the source. Let me click on that decomposition relationship. It's very simple, actually. If you see here, what you have is a source product and the destination product. What you're telling the system is when a decomposition is being fed with this source product, it has to result in this destination product. So that's one key point to remember. The second one is the mapping rules, or the attribute propagation is another term that we used. Is a means to propagate that information from the commercial layer to the technical, or a commercial model to technical model. As an example, let me try to add one here and show you, right? So the source where that information is being mapped from could be a field or an attribute. Let's say we select a field here. So it could be one of the Salesforce objects. If it is a field, the dot notation is supported, or you could select one of the attributes from the product. And from the mapping type, there are three different mapping types. Add verbatim, it refers to copying as is from the source to destination without making any changes. A list is another type where you can create a source destination pair, meaning for when a value on the source side is X, then on the destination you would want a value as Y, as an example. And the third pattern of mapping is the static. It's a constant value. So regardless of whatever is there on the source side, you always have a constant value mapped to the destination. On the destination side, you cannot map it to the field. So destination will always have to be an attribute. Okay. And within the decomposition relationship, the third part, or a key part to remember, is conditions. So you can include a condition to state that only when this condition is being met, only then this decomposition relationship should be executed. As an example, let us say you have a scenario where the customer is going for a home internet, right? So home internet, based on the speed, whether when the speed that has been selected by the customer is 20 Mbps, it can be served by a DSL technology. Then you would want a DSL modem or a DSL specification as a destination product to be generated. You could have another decomposition relationship to say that if the condition is 100 Mbps, as in if the bandwidth that has been chosen by the customer is 100 Mbps, then you would want to have a different destination product to be generated. And that's where this decomposition relationship condition comes handy. So based on this condition, this decomposition relationship will be evaluated to true. Only then that product will be generated. So going back to my the earlier screen, right? So you can have more than one decomposition relationship, which either one of them could, more than one could be evaluated to be true, or either of them could evaluate true depending on that condition, right? So accordingly, depending on the decomposition relationship, you will have these technical products that are generated. So another important aspect I wanted to also highlight here is, so in this case, one commercial product actually has resulted in more than one technical product. So I think the reason for that is, if I go back again, right? Although we have one single decomposition relationship, this is a special case here. For this particular product, we also have a parent class. So what parent class does is, let us say, if there are many variants of this blazed internet offer, right? Every time you introduce a new variant of this blazed dedicated internet offer, you do not want to have those common steps part of this particular offer, right? You could actually have a parent class which basically groups some of the common steps. So in this case, for a parent class, if I go to fulfillment, right? This has three different decomposition relationship, whether it comes to decomposition relationship or orchestration task, which is common to some of the products under that family, then you can actually configure them in parent class. And that is the reason why, if we look here, although this particular product had one single decomposition relationship, because it's also has a parent class associated to that, that's why you see more than one technical product being generated in this case. Okay. Whereas we look at this child product here, this has connectivity, installation, and activation, and the non-recurring charge billing spec. These are the two technical products that have been generated. So if I click on this product here, let's have a look. I go to fulfillment. So it has only two decomposition relationship, and hence we see there are only two technical products being generated. There is no parent class in this. So this, hence you're just seeing the products, technical products that are generated because of the decomposition relationship that are directly associated with this product here. Okay. If we go into that, as I said, it's very simple. You have source product, destination product, the mapping rule, and the condition. Okay, so this is here, we have a condition here, which is set. This will only be generated, right? This destination product is only going to be generated when this professional install required condition is evaluated to be true. Okay, so let's go back to more of theory now. So attribute propagation, as I said, it is a means to propagate information from the commercial model to the technical model. So each of the technical fulfillment requests is expected to be self-sufficient in terms of the information. So when the technical product model on the technical fulfillment request actually is being fed into the orchestration engine, it is expected that it will have all the required information, whether it is coming from the commercial product model or other objects like order line item, or account object. All that information will have to propagate it, and the mapping rules, the settings that we saw in the earlier demo, is a means to propagate that information. Conditional decomposition relationship, I think this is something which we touched already, where you can actually specify a condition under which that decomposition should be evaluated to true. The condition, again, it allows for and, or, and a combination. So you can introduce multiple conditions. I mean, the conditions in such a way that, like, when you are creating a SOQL query, where you can have those combinations to have that statement evaluated to be true. Similarly, so you can have that done in a more of a declarative fashion here. So attribute propagation example, we saw the mapping rule. So this is pretty much the same, where on the source you have attribute and or field, and then you have three different mapping type: add, verbatim, list, or a constant. So there's another one is the static, and which is being mapped to the destination. So order decomposition pattern. If we look at our example here, right, this is an example where one commercial, if you look at this commercial product, it's generated resulted in more than one technical product. So this is a 1-to-M pattern. So there are 4 different patterns that are supported. 1:1, where one source that is being fed into the decomposition module results in one single target. As an example, let us say where you have an internet product and you have a downstream system which is actually expecting one single customer facing service to be sent with all the information being part of that one CFS. So in that case, you will have 1-to-1. 1-to-M is a scenario where one source is resulting in multiple the technical products or a multiple target objects. As an example, home internet being decomposed into an access, a line, port, and a policy. This is more, let's say, if you have a Salesforce Industries OEM doing a SOM function as well, or to some extent sharing that SOM function, you are actually decomposing a customer-facing service into 3 different targets and fulfilling each one of them, or orchestrating each one of them from Salesforce Industries OEM. The third one is M2-1 pattern, where multiple sources are resulting in one single target. As an example, let us say a triple play offer, where a customer is buying home internet, digital TV, and landline. And if they're all actually being served on a same line, then instead of each of these commercial product or source products generating multiple instances of access line, you can actually generate one single access line with this M2N pattern. Then you have M2N pattern. M2N pattern is a combination of 1 to M and M2 this is the example I could say is similar to what I mentioned about M2 again, a triple play offer where not just the access line, let's say even from the modem, right? Let's say if it is a fiber, it is being served by a fiber technology and the service which is terminating on an NTD, then you have the modem, one single modem, which is serving for all those three commercial products. So then you'll have one single technical instance of that model specification being generated. So we covered this order decomposition demo. So we already went through the order decomposition, that configuration, and how the commercial construct is resulting in the technical fulfillment request and the technical products. So we'll go through the next topic, which is order orchestration. So if you look at this example here, so what I've done is I've just given sort of a diagrammic representation of the product model. So where you have a Vlocity broadband, which decomposes into a DSL modem, ADSL CFS, and the ADSL customer facing service further decomposes into these three RFSs. Now, if you look at, if you go by workflow-based paradigm, you could actually have an orchestration plan or a workflow which is directly linked to an orchestration Vlocity broadband commercial product. The limitation with that approach is this end-to-end workflow or a plan, when it is directly linked to a Vlocity broadband, let's say you have many different variants of this product or an offer, and you will actually have to maintain all those workflows, and any changes within that step as you go through making those changes on those sub steps. For example, let's take this example of a DSL modem, right? So DSL modem for downstream system is expecting some changes, or due to some features being introduced, you want to make some changes to the steps that are required to execute a DSL modem, right? If you are making any changes to that, which means that all those 10 workflows will have to be updated and maintained and managed. So that will actually takes away that modularity that can be maintained. If we look at the same example, right, instead of having one workflow which is being assigned directly to the commercial product, if you have the steps that are required just for these sub products or the decomposed technical products, and in during runtime you actually generate this end-to-end plan based on what is required for each of the product. So instead of having that end-to-end orchestration plan or a workflow which is configured during the design time, what we have is, for each of these technical products, we have the orchestration plan definition is what we call it, or the number of steps or set of steps that are required to fulfill each of these technical product. And based on your decomposition relationship as generated during runtime, what system does is it constructs an orchestration plan based on the steps which are required to fulfill each one of these technical product. So orchestration plan in Salesforce Industries OEM is generated dynamically. This end-to-end plan is not a design time configuration. So this is a runtime configuration. This allows for that great flexibility on maintaining those specific steps that are required for each of these technical product independently, and also it allows for that modularity. For example, DSL modem or ADSL RF CFS as a product, they could be used by multiple other commercial products. So you could simply plug into those commercial products through your decomposition relationship, and the steps that are required to fulfill this commercial product can be generated during runtime. So feature overview of orchestration. So dynamic generation of orchestration scenarios. This is an important one, as I mentioned already. If you let me go back to my demo and I can show you that here, right? So if you look at this orchestration plan, right, the sections which are separated by these lines, we call it as a swim lanes, and each of these sections are they belong to a technical product, like via orchestration scenario, and this end-to-end orchestration plan has been constructed during runtime dynamically. Okay, so it's not a design time configuration, it is runtime, it's generated during runtime. Support for dynamic task instantiation and task dependencies. So each of the blocks that you see within the orchestration plan, these are the orchestration items or the orchestration task. The instance of that is generated during runtime. So we will actually talk more in detail about each one of these tasks and as to how we have to configure that. Support for both automated and manual task resolution. Support for custom logic, data lookup through auto task. Again, each of these tasks, we will actually have a look at how we configure them within the system. Okay, so let me go back to the same example or the order that we created. Okay, so we just to recap, right? So we have commercial this commercial product resulting in these technical product. If we take the example of this particular child product, which is part of the commercial offer, right? It is resulting in these two technical product. And if we look at the example for this technical product here, right? This technical product will have certain steps that needs to be executed in our orchestration plan, right? When I double click on this, the product that is associated with this, we go to the fulfillment tab. So we touched on the decomposition relationship. So this section here as orchestration scenario. So orchestration scenario is a way to link the technical product to the steps that are required to execute that, fulfill that technical product, right? Let me go back again. I'll just start. So this technical product, right? The steps that are required to fulfill this technical product, which is part of the orchestration plan. If I go to the orchestration plan in our case, right? If I look at the example here, right? In our example, the steps that you have at the bottom here, right? These two steps, professional install, actually are the two steps that are required to fulfill this particular technical product. And why you have that during generated during runtime, the configuration that has led to that steps being generated. If we go here, right? So you have this orchestration scenario. When we go into orchestration scenario, so what orchestration scenario has is the technical product name itself. Then you have an action which actually tells you for what action on this product should we have this orchestration plan definition. And then you have this orchestration plan definition. So orchestration plan definition refers to the steps that are required to fulfill this particular product. So if I go into the orchestration plan definition, so these are the two steps, confirm installation complete and professional installation technician. If I go here, right? So these are the two steps that you see here. That is because of this configuration that we have within that orchestration plan definition. Again, we'll actually look at different orchestration item definition a bit later in the session. So going back to the orchestration scenario itself, for a given technical product, you can have more than one orchestration scenario. which means an orchestration scenario, it could actually be executed based on certain conditions. Again, this condition is important. Let us take an example. Again, going back to the home internet, let us say home internet, you are delivering a modem as a telco, you are also delivering a modem for that home internet. And the modem delivery could have options like, let's say you are giving an option for a customer for a store pickup, or the modem to be dispatched directly to the customer, right? So depending on the setting that is being selected by the customer when placing the order, so the customer says that I want this modem to be dispatched directly to my address, I don't want to have that store pickup. So in that case, this condition could actually, you could have a condition which includes a check to say that based on the commercial attribute that has been selected by the customer in your product, commercial product model, right? Based on that setting, this orchestration scenario should evaluate to true, and hence this orchestration plan definition should be generated. When the customer has actually selected a direct store pickup, so in that case, you don't want your fulfillment system to deliver this modem, then in that case, you don't need this orchestration plan definition to be generated. So this condition is also an important aspect of this orchestration scenario configuration. Okay. So we'll go back into the demo as we go through, but let me just continue a bit more on the theory side now. So design time versus runtime, I mentioned this few times already, I think, where this orchestration plan that we are seeing is a runtime construct. So during design time, what you have is a list of orchestration plan definitions, and they are actually constructed during runtime based on the decomposed technical products and orchestration plan definitions that are configured for each of those technical products. Okay. So actually, I think I've been using a lot of terms, so I thought I'll keep this slide so that you don't get confused some of the terminologies that I've been using, right? So the end-to-end plan that we saw, that is a runtime construct. So during the design time, we do not have an end-to-end plan like this. Then orchestration plan definition. Orchestration plan definition, within the orchestration scenario, if you look at here, right? So this orchestration plan definition, this is a design time configuration, right? And actually orchestration plan definition includes the sequence of steps or the tasks that are required to be executed for each one of the technical products. Orchestration item definition, each one of the tasks within that orchestration plan definition is an independent entity in itself. It is called as orchestration item definition. There are different types of orchestration item. We'll go through that. During runtime, the system instantiates and it creates a runtime instance of an orchestration item definition. And then the lines that you see going between these orchestration items in the orchestration plan is called as orchestration dependency definition. Like if we go back to my earlier order that was created, for example, in this case, right, this particular task, call out to post payload, which actually has a line which comes from two different tasks. This means to say that this particular task cannot start without these two tasks getting completed. So during design time, you can configure a dependency to say that what are the tasks that this particular orchestration item is dependent on. Okay. And orchestration scenario is something we touched already. I think so we'll probably have a look at that in the next slide as well. Okay. So orchestration scenario, we saw that in the earlier demo. I think, sorry, let me go back. Okay, so orchestration scenario is something we saw here. Orchestration scenario links a product to a orchestration plan definition. Where you have an action. For example, you could have a different orchestration plan definition where a customer is trying to going for a new connect. There could be a different step for suspend. There's an optional field called sub action. So this could be useful. Let us say, as an example, if you look at suspend scenario itself, where a customer, you are suspending a service. In case of a mobile plan, for a device being stolen could be different for a suspension that can happen where the customer has stopped paying, right? So you could have different steps that could be required to be fulfilled, could be to be executed depending on those sub action scenarios. So that's where the sub action is useful. So orchestration rules will not go a lot in theory on this one. So I just wanted to use this diagram to some underline or stress on a couple of points. If you look at this diagram here, the PS cabinet is linked to 3 different orchestration plan definition via 3 different orchestration scenario. So orchestration scenario in itself can be independent and can be reused, right? In this case, a PS cabinet, for example, for a connect, it could have a different orchestration plan definition. Modified could have different, and disconnect could have different. So you could have 3 different orchestration, more than one orchestration scenarios being configured for one single product. Also, you have this example here where 2 different technical products or products are actually linked to one single orchestration scenario. Meaning, let's say if you have 2 different products which have exactly the same steps that needs to be executed, then you could actually have one single orchestration scenario which is linking to the orchestration plan definition for those 2 technical products. So that allows for a lot of modularity and a reuse of the orchestration plan definition. Okay, so next key topic is the orchestration item types. So the blocks that you see within the orchestration plan are called orchestration items. And each orchestration item can be of different types. These are the 5 major types that we will have a look. There are other 2 ones which are not frequently used, as in pull event is something reserved for future, and then there is subplan which we don't use it that frequently, but we'll focus on these 5. Call out is a task where the system has to interact with an external platform. Push event is where you want to pause the orchestration plan until condition evaluates it true, or until a trigger as until you have actually reached a stage. We'll see during the demo actually how exactly you can configure a push event. Then you have auto task. Auto task is basically where you're executing a piece of code within the Salesforce platform itself. Then milestone is more for a visual representation. Again, when you look at the demo, it will make much more sense and easy to understand. Then a manual task within the orchestration plan where you have to configure to execute certain manual steps. So we look at each one of the orchestration item types. So auto task. Okay, let me go back to the system again here. Again, I'm taking this example for this particular technical product, the connectivity installation and activation. When we go to that product, we go to the fulfillment tab. We saw the orchestration scenario earlier. So within orchestration scenario, you have orchestration plan definition. Orchestration plan definition includes the steps that are required to be executed to fulfill that particular product. So in this case, we already have 2 steps. If you look at this example here, so we had 2 steps for that particular orchestration plan definition, right? So in our case, we'll see how do we introduce a new step, right? So when you create an orchestration item definition, you'll have to select a record type. So this record type is for different orchestration item types. In our case, we'll just look at the auto tasks as a first example. So within auto task, the key fields to be populated are, one is the orchestration item definition name. So this name is common across all the orchestration item. And then you have item implementation is another key information that needs to be populated. So the item implementation is basically the code that needs to be executed when the orchestration plan or the OM encounters this particular step, right? So there are out of the box item implementations that are available. But let's say if that out of the box doesn't suffice to your needs, the common pattern that what we have seen is we see for the customers using the Vlocity integration procedures. So those of you who don't know about Vlocity integration procedure, so it's a declarative tool which allows you to configure the business logic in a sort of a no-code declarative way. So you could actually have that implementation logic being implemented through VIP and being called from here. So those are the key fields that needs to be populated for auto task. So these are the out-of-the-box auto tasks that are already available. One is assetize. So assetization is the common step in towards the end of order being fulfilled. So where an asset record is getting created. Then we have assetize order item. So this is for staged assetization. As an example, if you take an order which includes, let's say, a mobile plan as well as a fixed line, and mobile plan being something which can be fulfilled and provisioned very quickly, right? You would want to assetize that mobile plan so that you can start billing the customer sooner. And then once the fixed line is being activated, then you can actually create the asset and start billing for that fixed line. So assetize order item allows for that staged assetization. And the third one is the back propagate. So back propagate, when we spoke about attribute propagation earlier, so it refers to propagating information from the commercial model to the technical model, technical layer. Whereas back propagation, where I think as an example, you can take an example, let us say you are getting a MAC address or a serial number from the downstream system. Right. So typically that information is of relevant and use to your agent or the customer. So you want to propagate from the technical fulfillment request to the commercial layer. In that case, you can use the back propagate as the task. So these are the three out of the box auto tasks. As I said, if these ones doesn't suffice, you can actually have your custom implementation through Apex code, or the common pattern, as I said, is to use the VIPs. So you can actually configure your business logic declaratively using the Vlocity integration procedures. So the next one is the call out. Okay, so call out is an orchestration item. This is an important one where the Salesforce Industries OM during the order orchestration has to have an interaction with an external platform like your billing system or activation system. Let's go back and try to create one. So I'll select orchestration item, the record type as call out here. So the information, again, that is relevant and needs to be filled here is orchestration item definition name, a name that you want to actually identify with. Then system interface. So the system interface, let's say if it's an already existing, you already have configured an interface. I'll go through this in a moment, actually, what is included within the system interface. Then you can configure a timeout for this call out. and error queue. So error queue is actually a queue where whenever there is a fallout from this interaction that is happening with your downstream system, all right, any errors resulting from this interaction, this task gets assigned to this error queue that you have configured here, right? So let us have a look at this system interface. So that's one of the key configurations. So what I want to do is let me cancel this. So these are the key information. There are other fields as well, which we'll touch through this when we talk about the amend. For the retry part, again, this is something I'll cover during the fallout management. So what I want to do is we already have these call out examples. Let me open one of them here. Okay. So again, here you have the orchestration plan definition. This orchestration item belongs to, then the system interface and the error queue configured here. So system interface, it is a way of telling the system or the orchestration item as to the endpoint where it has to connect to, number one. Number two is how does the system have to construct that payload, right? The endpoint URL has the two important information here. One is the system itself, which actually has the base URL, shows the base URL. And then you have this path. This path gets appended to the base URL. So this path is a separate field here that needs to be populated. The reason there is this separation is typically, if you look at if you take the example of an activation system itself, right? Activation system could actually be exposing different interfaces for a different business transaction. Could be for disconnection, it could have a different interface call versus for activation, or for another business transaction, it could have actually different interface. So in that case, from the reusability point of view, you have that base URL being configured within the system, which is getting appended with path. Okay. Implementation is another key configuration for a system interface. So implementation is a way, means how actually the system is constructing the payload. There are already out-of-the-box implementation that are available for both for synchronous and asynchronous callout that can be used. But let us say if out-of-the-box does not suffice your needs, you can also have your own custom implementation. So there are standard templates that are available. For example, the Salesforce Industries OEM for callout supports a REST interface. Let's say you have a requirement for a SOAP call being made, then you can actually use that custom implementation. But generally, what we have seen with the customers is they do not have a point-to-point interface. You always have a ESB layer sitting in between, like a MuleSoft or some other layers which sits in between. And if there is a requirement of the payload having to be constructed according to the downstream system needs, which could be different to what out-of-the-box implementations provides, either you could use the custom implementation to construct that payload, or you could actually do that transformation within the ESB layer. ESB layer actually does other functionalities like authentication, logging, and so on. All of that complexities, actually, you can offload that to the ESB layer or an equivalent of that, like MuleSoft. Okay, so I touched on this integration adapter already. So there are these two out-of-the-box integration adapter that are available. One is the default system interface for synchronous callout, and you have this asynchronous system interface for asynchronous callout. This is pretty much similar to synchronous, except that during the original request being made, so there is a callback URI which is being included in the request, so that the system, the interfacing system can make a call out, and the call out is being handled through the data raptor, again, another declarative tool, which is part of the Salesforce Industries Omni Studio. Okay. So the next orchestration item is push event. Push event is like a pause button in the orchestration plan. So when the OM reaches this push event as a task, it waits for some event to push the flow forward. So let's have a look at how we create a push event. So here I select the orchestration item type. So there is another configuration that needs to happen for a push event. Actually, that's not shown here. So what I want to do is I want to save this. So I save that and I open that here. So within the push event record that we have created, so this is the condition which can be configured to say that only when this condition is being evaluated to true, only then this push event will have to go through. As an example, let us say you want to create a task where actually you have sent a request to a downstream system like an activation or a billing system, and they if they take a longer time, if you want to mimic an asynchronous interface, right? Once they have completed their processing, they could actually have an update directly on one of the fields or attribute within the system, and based on that condition being evaluated to true, you could actually progress the orchestration plan to the next step. This field this field that is being checked, it does not matter to the orchestration plan as to how actually that that field is being populated. Either it could be an external system doing an update, or it could be someone actually manually doing an update, or some Salesforce, some code sitting within the Salesforce platform is doing an update. So it does not matter how this field is getting updated, as long as this condition is being evaluated to true. This push event will progress the order to the next step. So as I mentioned, it doesn't matter how a field or a attribute get the value. It could be a manual change, integration call from outside to set this value, or internal Salesforce script which is updating that value. The field that you are trying to evaluate, it could be a field on the order item or a fulfillment request line, or an attribute on the order item or a fulfillment request lines taking a certain value. So we look at the next one, which is a manual event. Let me delete this. So with manual event, again, the orchestration item definition is something you'll have to populate for all the orchestration item types. So you actually configure the manual queue here, right? So this is a queue to which the task will get assigned when the orchestration plan encounters this manual task. And then there is this custom task execution URL. So this is an optional URL which you can include, which will direct the user to a UI if there are any steps that needs to be executed by an operator. For example, I think we should have one example here in our case. If I look at this particular orchestration plan that was completed earlier, right? So we have this one of the orchestration tasks, which is a manual task. In our case, this is still gray. So actually the green color indicates that this task has already been completed. The gray actually indicates that this task has been skipped. In our case, I have configured it to be skipped. The reason being, we wanted to actually have an auto flow instead of waiting for this manual task. But however, we'll try to execute this manual task, and I just want to show you how that custom URL impacts the functionality, directing the operator to a particular screen. Let's try to look at this configuration here, right? So from the orchestration item itself, you can go and have a look at the definition or a configuration related to that orchestration item. So in this case, this orchestration item has a orchestration item definition here. If I click on that orchestration item definition, so it has a manual queue, and also it has this custom task execution URL. So if I go to this particular task again, you see this arrow button here. So if you have actually configured a URL, then this clicking on this will direct the user to that particular URL. So in this case, we have used the Omni script to create this UI. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply execute these steps just for the demo. Again, this is an example here, but you could actually configure depending on the sequence of steps that an operator is required to do for that manual step. You could have it configured differently and could have different steps. So that should take me back to the orchestration plan. So if I come to the orchestration plan here, you see here this has turned green now. Now that orchestration task has been completed, right? This is not typically, that's not the flow, because actually I have used already a completed order to demonstrate that. In an actual the real life scenario, if you look at it, right, so you would actually have a task waiting here in a gray color, and all of these tasks wouldn't have been completed. The operator would actually be executing this task, completing this task, and only then it will progress to the tasks that are following it. Okay, so going back to my the manual task here, so you can actually create a custom task URL. Okay, I also want to show you this queue setup here. Let me open that again. So the manual queue that we are configuring within the orchestration item task will have the list of all the tasks that are being assigned to that manual queue. From the manual queue, you can initiate some actions like bulk retry, bulk complete, or assigning to a user. The bulk actions are useful, especially let's take an example where you have, let's say, a downstream system like a billing system, which is undergoing some maintenance for a period of time. In that case, all the call out for billing system would result in a fallout, and when there is a fallout, all those tasks get accumulated under this manual queue, and you as a user would want to, instead of having to go through the task individually, you could actually select those tasks and initiate that manual bulk action, whether it's a bulk retry or a bulk complete. This is not relevant in the context of a manual task orchestration item itself, but more in the case of let's say a call out. You have a error queue which is configured for a call out, and again, error queue is again a similar UI, right? It's a similar object where all the tasks all the follow tasks will actually get accumulated on the error queue, and as an operator, you could initiate a bulk retry or a bulk complete. So I think we touched on this during the demo. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so manual queue, I think one more point I wanted to highlight is the queue type, where you can actually configure the queue type to be a round robin or least loaded. So priority queue is not something relevant in case of OM standard. So what this queue type actually is meant to do is it is meant to assign the tasks that are going into the manual queue to the users within the manual queue. Depending on the queue type, and it's a round robin, as the name indicates, it will assign in a round robin fashion, or it could be least loaded, where it honors the tasks that are assigned to the users within the queue. That's an important part to remember. So it doesn't honor the task assigned to in other queues. It only honors the number of tasks that have been assigned to a user within the queue, and accordingly the task gets assigned to the user. So the next orchestration item is a milestone. So let me select this. So milestone is pretty simple, really. I mean, there is no business logic or anything. It is simply a visual representation. If you look at in our example here, right? So the first task here is a milestone task. So why is this required? Typically, the orchestration plan, right? They have too many tasks, and if you want to segregate from an operator point of view, let's say this orchestration plan includes the billing tasks, there are tasks for shipment, there could be tasks for activation, and so on, right? From a visual representation point of view, if you want to group them or give them a view that all of the tasks which belong to this swim lane are all billing related tasks, so you could have a milestone, a task, which actually give that visual representation. And one more is from the reporting point of view as well. Let's say you have a lot of orders which are waiting at different states. If you want to group the orders based on the different segments or steps that they are in, again, the milestone is a useful feature from that point of view. So one important point I want to highlight is milestones do not propagate business milestone to the order level. Let us say here in this case, right, where you have a milestone called as a start dedicated internet. This doesn't mean that when the orchestration plan or OM encounters this particular step, the order progress, the order status is getting updated. It actually, it's only for visual representation or for reporting purposes. So we'll go through the next topic, which is fallout management. So fallout management is key in terms of, especially for the callouts during a rainy day scenario. Let's say if the callout is not going as desired, how does the system handle those fallouts? Automated detection of errors based on the error code. So this is one of the desirable features. Highlighting of failed tasks in the process flow for easy visual detection. So as I said, each of the color in the task has a meaning. And when the task is failed, it will turn into red, giving that visual detection. Automatic assignment of tasks to queues fallout resolution. So when we configure a call out, we also give an error queue, and the tasks get assigned to that error queue whenever there's a fallout. Ability to perform specific actions on fallout, complete and retry. This is something we saw earlier for either for a manual, the queue assigned to a manual task, or error queue. You can initiate a complete retry as a bulk action as well. So order item lifecycle. So each the order item actually goes through the life cycle, and each color within that orchestration item has a specific meaning. When the orchestration plan is generated, all of the orchestration items are in the gray color, as in pending. If you look at it here, right? So this is a completed order, but when actually it orchestration plan is created, they're all in gray color. Then they move into a ready state once all the dependencies have been met, right? And it could remain in blue color until that orchestration item is completed, depending on how long they take. For example, auto tasks and milestones get completed quickly, but if you're making a call out or if it's a manual task, it could remain in blue color until it goes into a completed state. And depending on your retry configuration, it could either go immediately into a fail state, or it could go to a fatally fail state. So fatally, if there is no retry configuration, it will go to a fatally fail state. Whereas if there is a retries that have been configured, then so it could go into it will have those finite number of retries until the state for that orchestration item being changed to fatally failed. So this, you'll see those orchestration item in the red color. So retry policy, if I go back to that same example again here, the call out. So within the call out, you could actually either have the timeout and number of retries configured as shown here, or you could actually have a retry policy. Retry policy is a separate object in itself, and it could be reused across different callouts. Retry policy has three different variations. One is the no retry policy. So it immediately goes into a fallout whenever there's a failure. A monotonous forever retry policy, to retry continuously with an interval of m seconds as configured, or monotonous retry policy. This is to retry finite number of times for every m second as configured. Fallouts error queue, I think this is something we touched. All the errors, the fallouts actually gets assigned to that error queue, and from where actually you can initiate a bulk action like retry, complete, or assign to users. So we'll go to order amendment cancellation. So this is one of the last two topics that I want to cover. So supplemental order. So you would have heard the terms like in-flight amend or in-flight cancel. Now, in our case, we use a term called supplemental order. If you look at an example, let's take the example of a mobile plan or a home internet, where the order is currently in progress. And if the customer has changed his mind to cancel the order, like customer doesn't want to go ahead with that, or a customer has changed a mind, change his or her mind to introduce some changes, want to go for an upgraded plan, as in earlier, if they were requested for 20 Mbps, they want 100 Mbps or some additional feature to be introduced, right? How exactly does the system handle such changes? So in case of Salesforce Industries OEM, we generate a supplemental order, right? There are other terms that are being used like revision order or in-flight amend, but in our case, we use a term called a supplemental order. So what are the features within supplemental order? Full support for an in-flight order cancellation, supports commercial product changes, attributes, and products, whether it is adding a new commercial product or changing the feature within an ordered product. Support for point of no return. So this is an important concept, which is not just for Salesforce Industries OEM, the order management in general. You actually can configure the task as point of no return. If you take the example in case of, let's say, a fixed line internet again, right? When the modem is dispatched to the customer, so that's a point wherein, as a telco is experiencing, will have some cost when a modem is being dispatched, right? Beyond that point, you wouldn't want to allow such changes. So that's a point you can configure as a point of no return. So within Salesforce Industries OEM, at the task level, actually, you can configure whether this task constitutes a point of no return, whether you want to allow the changes, whether it is a cancellation of order or any changes to the order beyond this point. So that is something you can configure at the orchestration item level. Control of sequence of rollback steps via rollback groups and sub-processes. Again, so you can also configure rollback steps. For example, if a customer has initiated a cancellation at a particular step, what are the steps to roll back? One of the examples is if activation is already done in the system, or a design and assign is done, like you have reserved some of the resources already, and customer has asked for a call cancel. So you would want to execute some rollback steps. At the orchestration item level, you could include orchestration plan definition, which includes those callback steps, rollback steps, sorry. Visualization of amendment strategies. Again, so you will have a visual representation of what are the changes within the orchestration plan whenever a cancel or an amend has been initiated. Supplemental type, I think we touched on this. So these are the various supplemental types, whether it is adding or removing a product or a bundle, adding a feature, changing of attributes within a product, change at the order level, header level, or at the customer address. This is an example where this change is not necessarily on the order or on the commercial model itself, but let's say if the customer address is changing, which is the address is typically stored at the account level, even such changes are allowed as part of in-flight amend. So we'll have a look at one of the amend or a cancel scenario. So what I want to do is I want to close all other screens. We'll go to the account. We'll open the account object again. So I want to create a new order this time. So I'll include the date, the price list. I'm simply creating the order just like I did initially. For this order, what I want to do is I want to interject the order and initiate a cancellation. So configure button will take me to the CPQ UI from where I can add the product. Sorry, I'm seeing a lot of messages on chat window. As I said, I want to keep the Q&A to the end because I thought we had a lot to cover, and so I wanted to get it done within time. Okay, so nothing fancy I'm doing different from what I did earlier. So I'm simply I've added the product to the cart. I'm doing I'll submit that order. At this point, the CPQ is submitting the order to the OM. So what I want to do now is I want to actually open that order again and initiate a cancel. So you see these two buttons. Amend is where you are doing an amend, an in-flight amend, as in making changes to an existing order. A cancel is where you want to cancel an entire order. So at this point, what system is doing is system is checking whether a cancellation can be allowed based on the design time configuration, whether an orchestration has already reached a point of no return. Otherwise, it will actually progress with the cancellation. Okay, I think this has already reached a point of no return, hence I'm not able to execute this. Probably what we'll do is, let me have another look. So we'll create, I'll create one more order. So what I wanted to do this time is, so in this demo org, we have this configuration on the product model here, which says flow through or a manual task. Since actually I had the earlier order I had created, it is a flow through. So it got immediately provisioned and completed, and hence I couldn't interject. So I wanted to have this manual task so that it will stop at a point where the manual task is not skipped. So I could actually initiate a cancellation. So let me show you from the orchestration plan where exactly that particular attribute comes into play. So I go to the related, let me open the order. So the decomposition, it's pretty much the same what we had seen in earlier example. When we open the orchestration plan, okay, so if you look at the orchestration plan, what is different this time is, you see these three steps have already been completed. They are in green. Whereas this, now it is waiting at this step. This is a step where you see the blue color, right? So this is a manual task where it is waiting. And all of other tasks here are in gray color, which means these tasks have still not been initiated because this particular task is dependent on this task, and these tasks are dependent on this, and so on, right? So that's why they are waiting still in that state. Now, the reason why we have this instead of orchestration plan skipping this particular step, it is waiting here. If you remember in the CPQ UI, I did select a manual task instead of an automatic flow through. That's why the system is still waiting for this particular task for someone to manually act on this and complete this, right? So anyway, so the purpose of actually doing that is I just wanted to make sure that the order doesn't get completed, and it is in a early state where I could initiate a cancellation. Let me go back to the order again. So from the same order, I click configure. So these are the two buttons that are available. One is amend. Once you click amend, you could actually make changes to the product itself. I will not go through the amend scenario because we don't have much time, but we will see how cancellation is done. So we'll do a cancel for this order. Again, at this stage, as I was telling earlier, the CPQ is trying to evaluate whether the orchestration for this particular order has gone through point of no return, and can the cancellation be allowed. So, okay, so in this case, the cancellation is allowed. So the CPQ has submitted, has created a supplemental order. So if we go to the account page again, let me open that original order that I created. So within that original order, so you will see this superseding order, which means this particular order has superseded this original order. So the cancellation is being met by the superseded order. If you go to the superseded order here and the decomposition tab, you'll see that there is a supplemental action that has been generated where the decomposition, based on the action that was performed on the CPQ side, it has generated a supplemental action telling the order management to evaluate the orchestration plan definition that are required for all of these technical product to be canceled. And when we go through I'll open the orchestration plan. So orchestration plan, there is no new orchestration plan generated. It's the same orchestration plan that was associated with the original order, but that our orchestration plan will be updated to the recent state. So I think we have it open here already. Let me go through this. So if you look at this orchestration plan now, right? So when we initiated the cancellation, the orchestration plan was waiting at this particular manual task. Now, all of these tasks have turned shows a color black, which means that these tasks were already completed before the cancellation was initiated, and hence this color shows. This shows that hence the color black. Now, these tasks have turned brown, which means to say that these tasks were not executed prior to the cancellation being initiated. But since cancellation has been initiated, these tasks are being discarded or they are disregarded, and hence they have turned brown. And another important point to note here is this additional task that has been added. So this task was not present in the orchestration plan that was generated when you created the original order. This was added only when the supplemental order has been generated. So this task refers to a rollback step. As I said, as an example is when you are initiating a cancellation, if you want certain steps to be performed, then you can configure rollback steps. The reason why you're seeing this task here is if I go to this particular orchestration item, so within that orchestration item, when I go to orchestration item definition here, so this is the rollback plan definition that has been configured. Again, if I just click on that, I go to related, you will see this one single task that has been included here, which refers to the rollback task. So within the orchestration item definition, you can include the rollback plan definition in case of a cancellation, or an amend plan definition in case you are initiating a modify of an order, an in-progress order. What should be the steps that should be executed? At the point of no return is a checkbox to indicate whether an in-flight amend or a cancellation is allowed once this task has been executed. So, okay, so this is for cancel. So we'll not go through in-flight amend. It's pretty much works similar, except for that when you do the in-flight amend within the order decomposition, this supplemental task, instead of cancel, you would actually see actions like no change or a modify. And accordingly, the orchestration plan definition will be generated based on the orchestration scenario that you would have configured during design time. So we'll go through one last topic that we have for the day, which is the MACD orders. MACD orders refers to the after sales or the changes that you are introducing for a service once the service is active, right? So these are the 4 different variations within after sales. One is the move, which is the customer is moving the service from one location to the other location, adding a new product or a service, making changes to an existing service, as an example could be a bandwidth upgrade for a fixed line, which is already on a 20 Mbps. If you want to go for 100 Mbps, so that's a change MACD order. And a delete, disconnection or a temporary disconnection or suspension. So there are different variations within MACD, but these are the 4 key types of MACD orders. I'll not be covering too much in theory on MACD. We'll have a look at a demo for one of the services we created earlier. So if I go, again, I go back to the account page. So for the services that we created earlier, as I said, at the end of order, the active instances of services being created, they are called as assets. And in our case, since so far in the demo, we created 2 services and then 1 cancellation. So we have the 2 assets that have been created. When we go through this tab, this asset management tab, again, it will list all the assets under this account. Now, I select one of these assets that I want to modify. You will see these buttons here, change to code, change to order, and move. Change to code is more relevant in the context of B2B, so we'll not use that. So we'll just try to use that change to order. So I've selected this particular asset and I click change to order. So what that does is, so it will prompt for a future date order. So this is also a way to create a future date order, but now since we want to execute this immediately, I'll just leave the date and time as is. Okay, so this takes me to the CPQ UI where that asset has been converted into order line item, and we see that order line item in the UI here. I go to configure section. In this case, let's say a customer is requesting for an upgrade. Now it is a 20 Mbps bandwidth and customer wants to upgrade it to 100 Mbps. So let's say I select 100 Mbps. You'll see this, even the pricing should change based on that. So you'll see the price change. Again, that is a part of the EPC and the CPQ configuration. So we'll not touch on that. But again, there's a real-time update calculation that happens and the pricing gets accordingly reflected. So I've made a change to a committed bandwidth is 100 Mbps and I'm doing a submit order. So let me open that order that I created now. So if I go to the decomposition here, so what we have here is on the commercial product that I've added to the cart, where from asset I've converted into order line item. So what we have done is on the parent offer, I have done a modification and hence you see a modify. Whereas on the child product, we didn't make any changes. That's why you see a no change. And the decomposition has resulted in this decomposition tree where it has identified that based on the commercial changes that has happened on the commercial model, what are the technical products that has undergone change and which ones are no change, right? This one important aspect to remember is MACD decomposition also takes into account of an existing asset and inventory record, which was created as when the service was initially activated. So it does the delta comparison and hence you see these actions accordingly, whether it's a modify or a no change, takes into account of the existing asset and the inventory item record. Now, when I go to the orchestration plan, so based on the orchestration scenario that was configured for each one of these product, and based on these action, so we will see an orchestration plan that was generated during runtime. Okay, so this is an end-to-end plan that is generated. So each of these section or a swim lane corresponds to the technical products that have undergone change. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3 technical products that have that is been modified, and hence you will see the orchestration plan that has been generated includes 3 sections. I think in this case, there is only one orchestration scenario corresponding to each one of those products, and hence you see the orchestration plan including these steps. This has already been completed. This particular step, as I said, in our case, the demo in the demo environment, we actually have skipped the manual step, manual task, hence it is still in gray. Okay, so this order has already been fulfilled. Now, if I go back to my account record again, and I want to have a look at that asset. So So this is the asset that we updated. No, this is the other one, which is actually still in 20 Mbps. So this has been updated to 100 Mbps now. Okay. Okay, so I think we are almost coming to the end of the session. So these are some of the advanced topics I want to leave with you. So whatever we have covered today, it covers almost end to end, but in some cases you may need to have something beyond what is the default configuration. So these are the topics that you may want to explore, including decomposition scope, orchestration scope, customer adapter integration. As I said, if you want to implement something beyond REST interface, so you want to make some changes to the way that payload goes out of during the call out, then you can use a customer adapter integration. MN plan definition and role plan definition. Also, this is something we touched during our cancellation demo as well. Enablement resources. So there is already industries OEM course available on the Vlocity University if you want to explore. So there are a lot of hands-on exercises as well. So as you've seen during today's demo, it's mostly configuration. So you can try out those hands-on exercise. Apart from industries OEM, I also would highly recommend you to go through two other courses. One is the Omni Studio Developer / Consultant and CPQ. On CPQ, my colleague Georgie has had a wonderful session a few weeks ago that's available on Apex Hour, so you can explore that as well. Okay, I think we actually it has taken longer than I expected. I was hoping to finish in 90 minutes, but it has taken longer than expected. I hope it was worth it. Any pressing questions?